Hello everyone, I am Nabil Mourad. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to extract data from a data model by using a drop list. The data model lives in the Power Pivot window as you already know. So here is my data model, and we'll be building this model from scratch, but let me first explain the work situation we have. I'm going to close my data model and I'm going to switch to my desktop. On my desktop, I have a folder, and in this folder, I have a subfolder, and in the subfolder, I have multiple files. So I have two Excel files, I have an Access database, and I have two text files. Let's have a look at one of the two text files, 2018 sales or 2019 sales. I'll be opening one of them. And for each one of the text files, I have a large number of records. I have a date, a region, a manager, a phone, a customer, cost of goods sold, and sales. What I would like to do is to combine all the text files available in this folder. And then I'm going to clean and transform the data. I'll be creating an M function in Power Query. Then I'll be sending the data to Power Pivot. In Power Pivot, I'll be creating a measure using a DAX function. And then I'll be doing the magical part, extracting data from the data model by using a drop list in Excel. So we have a lot to learn. Let's get started. Here is my start file. You can download the exercise file and follow along by clicking on the link below this video. I would like to start by bringing all the files available in the folder of the txt file. So I go to the Data tab of the ribbon, and on the Data tab to the left side, I click on Get Data, From File, From Folder. I have to browse to the location of that folder, so I click on Browse. It's available on my desktop. I scroll to that folder, and here is the folder I want to bring 2 years. I hit OK, and then I hit another OK, and that will open a dialog box. In this dialog box, I see the different files available in that folder, and because I want to clean it and transform it, so I take it to Power Query by clicking on Transform Data. My Power Query editor opens, and here I see in the extension column, I can see the extension of the different files. To the right side of my Power Query editor, I see the applied steps. I want to start by naming my query all years because I'll be combining sales from different years. That doesn't add a step to the applied steps. And now to make sure that I'm bringing just the text files, I want to filter the extension column and exclude any other format other than the txt. But because the filter is case sensitive and I don't want any file to skip my filter, then I'll be first transforming and converting every extension to lowercase by right-clicking on the extension column, hover over transform, and from the submenu select lowercase. It doesn't look like it made any change right now, but in the future, if you add a file with a different extension in uppercase, then it will be converted to lowercase. Then in my next step, I click on the extension column and I want to apply a filter. So I hover over text filter, I select equals, and here I want to specify just the text file. So I type .txt. When I hit OK, keep an eye on the applied steps. An extra step has been added, and now I can look at the files. Only the txt files are available. I don't need any one of these columns. I just need the content column. So I'm going to select it, and then I right-click, and from the right-click menu, I remove other columns. If I click to the right side of each one of these files, in the lower left corner, you will see a preview of that file. So I'm clicking, and I see that it's a txt file. We need to bring the contents of these files and combine them all together and append them on top of each other. So I'm going to click on this little combine icon, which is represented by two double down pointing arrows. When I click on it, it will open the combine dialog box. In the Combined Files dialog box, I look at the different columns: date, region, manager, phone, customer, cost of goods sold, and sales. That's fine. 7 columns. The delimiter is a tab, so all what I need to do here is to hit OK, and I would have combined the files available in that source folder. A bunch of queries have been created on the fly, and you can see them on the left side. And now what I would like to do is to create a calculation. So to make more room, I'm going to collapse the queries pane, and I want to create an extra column that subtracts the cost of goods sold from sales to calculate the profit. I click on the Add Column tab in my Power Query editor, and I click on Custom Column. The Custom Column dialog box opens, and for the new column I want to give it a name. I'll be naming it Profit. To calculate the profit, I need to subtract the cost of goods sold from sales, so I can simply double-click on Sales, type a minus sign, and double-click on Cost of goods sold. But because this subtraction might return more decimal that I need, and I want to unify the appearance, so I'm going to round up the result. So I want to include the result in a round function. We have a similar round function in M language in Power Query, but we call it number.round. So I type number.round. Functions in Power Query are case sensitive, so note that I'm typing capital N and capital R. I click at the very end, I type a comma, and I set the number of decimal places to 2, so I type 2 and I close the bracket. Now if I hit OK, I would have created the new column, the profit column. I want to change the data type for the profit column, so I click on the little icon to the left side of the field name, and from here I'll be selecting currency. That's wonderful. This is all what I need. I want to get rid of some fields, so I click on the leftmost, which is the date column. I press Shift and click on Manager, and then I don't want any one of these columns. I press Control and click on Profit, and then I right-click, and from the right-click menu I select Remove Other Columns. If I was in Excel, removing the cost of goods sold and sales will return an error, but look what happens here. Nothing is affected in the profit column. I finished creating the steps of my query, and I want to send the result to the Power Pivot model. Maybe the source files increase in number, maybe they increase in the number of records beyond what Excel can accommodate. So I click on the Home tab, I click on the down arrow for Close and Load, and here I click on Close and Load too. In this dialog box, I just want to create a connection, so I select the radio button, Only Create a Connection, and I check the box, Add this data to the data model. When I hit OK, I would have sent the result of Power Query to the data model. After cleaning and transforming my data and sending it to the data model, I don't need the Queries and Connections pane, so I'm going to close it. I want to switch to the data model, which is in fact the Power Pivot window where I sent my data. I can do that by clicking on Power Pivot and click on Manage to the very left, or still on the Data tab, I can click on the same icon. It reads, Go to the Power Pivot window. When I click on this icon, it will trigger my Power Pivot window, and here are the fields returned from Power Query: a date, a region, a manager, and a profit. Remember that the data that you see here is the result of combining multiple text files available in one single folder. I would like to create a calculation that adds up the profit. And to add up the profit, I'm going to create a measure. To create a measure, I create it in what we call the calculation area, which is the grid below the table that you see. If you don't see the calculation area, that means it's hidden, so you can reveal it by clicking on the command to the right side of the Home tab, Calculation Area. It's a toggle command, so if I click a second time, I'll be bringing the calculation area. I select any cell in the calculation area, and I'll be creating a measure. To create a measure, I start typing in the formula bar, so I'll be giving a name to this measure, total profit. That's the name of the new measure, total profit. I type a colon and an equal sign, and I would like to add up the profit, so I'll be using a very simple function, a sum function. So I type sum and I hit tab. I get a list of the different fields available. I just want the profit, so I select profit and I hit tab and I close the bracket. When I hit enter, I would have created my measure. This is an implicit calculation that can be used inside a pivot table to slice and dice the different fields. I want to format my measure, so I click on the dollar icon and I want to format it as currency English United States. After doing this, I want to create a pivot table that returns a single occurrence of each manager. And I do that by clicking on the down arrow for pivot table, and I click on pivot table. Automatically, I go back to Excel. I want to create my pivot table in the existing worksheet, and I'm going to dump it in cell M1, and I hit OK. And another OK, and now I see my pivot table field list. It's a power pivot field list, because here what you see is a table. It has a little triangle and expand and collapse symbol. So if I expand it, I see the different fields coming from the data model, and I can see my measure, the total profit, and these fields include data coming from two files that were combined and cleaned and transformed in Power Query. All what I need to do is to drag the manager, and I'm going to drop it in the row drop area. Automatically, I get a unique list of managers. I don't need the pivot table field list anymore, so I'll be closing it. And I'll be cleaning my pivot table a bit. I don't want a grand total. I want to bring the label here, manager at the top, instead of this label row labels. I click on the design tab, and to the left side of the design tab, I click on the down arrow for grand totals, and I select off for rows and columns. I want to bring the label, and that is simple by changing the report layout. I click on the down arrow for report layout and I select show in tabular form, and now I have my label. I'm going to use this list of managers to create a drop list in my worksheet. So if more files are added or more managers are added to the source list, my drop list will be dynamic. And in order to do that, I need to save this list in a named range. So I'll be creating a named range by going to the Formulas tab of the ribbon and click on Define Name. The Define Name dialog box opens, and here it reads Manager. I'll keep the same name, but to create a list that can expand and shrink to accommodate more or less names, I'm going to use an offset function. So I'll be typing equal offset, I open bracket, and then the offset function requires 5 arguments. What's your starting point? My starting point will be cell M1. And then the second argument, how many rows up and down would you like to move? I want to start from the second row, so I want to move one single row down, so I type 1, and then I type comma, how many columns right and left? 0 columns right and left. I'm in the fourth argument, which specifies the height of my offset function, and the height will be calculated with a count A function that will count how many names I have in column M. I type count A, and I open bracket, and I select column M by hovering over letter M. I close the bracket. The count A function, which specifies the height of the range stored in the offset function, will be including the manager as well. I don't want the label manager, so I type -1. Now I hit comma, and I'm in the last argument of the offset function. What's the width of the range you want to store? It's one single column, so I type 1 and I close the bracket, and I would have created my named range. I hit OK, and before using it in my drop list, I want to test it. So I click on the name manager, I put my blinking cursor in the refers to box, and look at the blinking dots that will appear. Now the range is dynamic. Adding more names will expand, deleting names will reduce the size of that named range. I close the name manager, and now I'm ready for the magic. I click on cell A2 and I want to create my drop list. To create a drop list, I go to the data tab of the ribbon and then I click on data validation. Alternatively, you can use the shortcut Alt-DL tab L tab. My blinking cursor is in the source box and I want to use the named range that I created by using the offset function. If you forgot the name, then hit F3 and it will open the paste name dialog box. I select manager and then I hit OK and another OK. I would have created my drop list. Let's select one of the names. I'll be selecting, let's say, Melissa. I have a dynamic label in cell C1, total profit by Melissa. So I want to extract that profit. The profit comes from the measure that I created in the calculation area in my data model. But what I created is a measure that I'll be filtering based upon the selected option in cell A2, my drop list. So I'll be using a Cubevalue function equal Cubevalue. When I hit tab, it asks me for a connection. My connection will be I type double quote and I select this workbook data model. So I hit tab, I'm extracting from the data model. And then I hit comma, the second argument, member expression 1. I want to extract from a measure, and to specify the measure, I type a double quote and then an opening bracket, and here you go. I see it in the IntelliSense list. I hit the tab key and then I type dot. The moment I type dot, I'll see all the measures I created. The only one I have is the total profit, so I hit tab. Don't forget to close the double quotation. This will return the total profit from the data model, so I type comma and I want to filter it based upon my drop list, so I click on cell A2 and I close the bracket. When I hit enter, that's the real magic. Just imagine, I'm extracting the total profit returned by the sales rep or the manager, Melissa, based upon thousands of records coming from multiple files available in one single folder. And it's dynamic. Let me show you what I mean. I click on the down arrow and I select another sales rep, let's say Mary. And then I select another one, let's say George. Everything is dynamic, my label is dynamic, and the total profit is dynamic. Now let's go to the most important part of this tutorial. What happens if I add more files in the source folder? Let's do that. I'm going to switch to my desktop. The shortcut is Windows D, and on my desktop I have the folder Data Validation. Here is the 2 years. In the 2 years I have 2018 and 2019 sales. So I'm going to move up. I have the 2020 sales as well. So I'm going to put it in that folder and rerun all the steps. I take that folder, Control X, go to the 2 years folder, and then I paste it. So now I have 3 years instead of 2. In the 2020 sales, I have more records. I have different sales rep. That's not a problem. Power Query will handle that. And then I go back to Excel. Here is my Excel file. All what I need to do is to refresh. When I refresh, Power Query will run all the steps and will extract the new records from the third file in the same folder, combine them all together, create the profit column, send the data to Power Pivot, and here my drop list will be extracting the up-to-date numbers. Keep an eye on the manager column. Keep an eye on the number for George. When I refresh by clicking on refresh all, that's one option. I prefer to use the shortcut Control Alt F5. That's the shortcut for refreshing. And then here it's dynamic. I have the new number for George. I have more sales rep. Like Nabil was not in the list before. So if I click on the down pointing arrow and select Nabil, these are the total sales for Nabil. And I select Karen, which was not in the previous 2 years. Here are the total sales for Karen. And I finished creating my project. In this project, I combined multiple files from a folder by using Power Query. In Power Query, I cleaned and transformed the data. I created a calculated column. I sent the data as a connection only to the data model. In the data model, we created a measure, the total profit, and then we created a pivot table to extract a unique list of managers. We created a named range to save the list of managers. I used it in creating a drop list, and then I used a Cubevalue function to analyze the data in my data model.